Hello, can you please tell me your name and where you're from? Thanks.
My name's Angie Farrell, and I come from Oldham, but I'm actually working with Breakthrough Right to Control Centre for Independent Living.
Thanks for that. Could you please tell me a bit about the right to control and maybe a specific part of right to control?
Well, right to control is a new legal legislation that's been brought in by the government for people who are in the trailblazers that are going across the country. Part of Greater Manchester is one of those, which covers 5 local authorities in Greater Manchester. And it's to give people on certain funding streams the right to have the control over how they spend the money, to support them in to live their lives with more control and independence. It gives them more flexibility and more involvement in producing what the support package should be in relevance to how they want to live their life.
I know from our previous conversation you've spoken quite eloquently about the power of access to work and the difference that has made to your life. Do you mind just going into a bit of detail about that?
Access to work?
Yeah.
I first went on access to work a long time ago when it first came into being when I first started working in the late 70s, early 80s. Then it was just mostly fares to work, which could be used for taxis to get you to places, and up to £7,000, and it was for equipment based around the place where you worked. At that time, because my disability wasn't as bad as it is now, I just had for a few bits of equipment that I needed to carry out the work. The early one I can remember getting was a telephone here that actually held the receiver for me when I made telephone calls, because I was actually a clerical assistant then in the Department of Environment. And they paid for taxis for me to get to and from work. Obviously over the years, because I have cerebral palsy, my disability gradually got worse and I became less able to doing things, so I needed more support. And as I went through my working history, my needs got greater and access to work developed to a point where now, or since 2002 really, it actually pays for me to have a PA, that I'm actually their employer. Yeah. And I get 40 hours a week support from an employer to employ a PA to support me. Though I only actually work 35 hours a week, I've asked for 40 because my PA I start to work at 9 o'clock, say, but my PA actually starts to work when they get to my house at 8:30 to drive me to work. And obviously I finish here at the office at say 5 o'clock, but obviously my PA work doesn't finish until they get me home. So they're actually doing a bit more than me as opposed to, so I've had to include that in my package really.
Yeah.
Also because I need, my package is broke up into 3 areas. It's broke up into my personal care because I need support when I'm at work for my personal care. My driving, because I'm an outreach worker, so we do a lot of driving because obviously I can't drive. And my support with some of my admin that I can't do.
Yeah.
So the package is broken down into 3 areas.
Yeah.
So that means at lunchtime, my PA might not always get a proper lunch break from me.
Yeah.
Because obviously I need support with my eating. Yeah. So that's included. That's why it actually comes to actually 40 hours as opposed to my 35 working
brilliant.
pattern.
Kind of bringing it back a little bit to right to control.
Yeah.
What would, in your opinion, what would you like to see as the future of right to control?
I think to recognise that the disabled person is the right person to develop their own package, and I'm hoping that's what the idea with right to control was brought into, and then to structure the way the PAs are working for them really. And I think that's where the flexibility of right to control comes into, where you have that control over what goes into your support plan. And once you give them the money within your outcomes, then you can use that money and get on with it, basically. So that base, if you turn it to access to work, it then enables me or other disabled people to actually contribute to society because we're actually earning. And that gives you a whole wealth of, you know, self-esteem is built up. You get more people who can, you know, make more friends, you get more status in life. But it also saves the government a lot of money because it's not only employing you as a disabled person, you're actually creating employment for your support workers.
Yeah.
And I think I've worked out, or my son's worked out because I'm not very good at maths, that for every disabled person that gets access to work, for every £1,000 spent on them, you're actually generating another 7,000 back to the government. What you're saving, you know, benefits like income support, job seekers allowance for 2 people, not just the one.
Brilliant. Thank
So
you
I
very
think
much
it gives for both sides of it, you know what I mean?
Brilliant. Thank you.
So.
Super. Yeah.